What's up, YouTube? Mr. Lime SC here, and today we are going to be talking about Diablo 2 Resurrected ladder reset characters, right? So this is going to be the characters and the party as well. How do I group and decide what do I need for my team? What combinations should we pick up? How should we play and get it all together, right? So let's jump on over. I'll talk a little bit about each of the characters, some of the roles, and then show you kind of how I combine them or think about combining them, right? So the first thing is, here's kind of your base level characters. Here they are broken out a little bit more. So you have a Lightning Javazon, which is going to be doing lightning damage. This is my preferred Javazon, which is why I have it in green. Charge Strike and Lightning Fury are the greatest single target and AoE skills in the game. Absolutely murder stuff. Very strong in higher level or higher character combinations, though, because the Amazon overall is a little slow to get going. So, and she's also very glass cannon. So the more that you can like wait with her for when you have a higher party, the stronger that she's going to be. Or by I say higher party, I mean more people in a party. Fire's on, Cold's on, not as preferred, but they're both also just damage, really, with a little bit of support or crowd control from a Cold Bozon. Trapsin, Fire or Lightning, I have it as either because a lot of times you're going to be using both of them as you're playing through the game. You'll start with Fire and switch into Lightning, but if your team has a lot of lightning damage, you might continue to use Fire later on. This is a damage character, but also has support tank damage. That's like a second kind of role I've given to these characters because it has Mind Blast. It has Cloak of Shadows. Technically has Shadow Master as well, though I wouldn't really recommend it. But you have more of the ability to kind of control the area and help support the team and tank stuff with like the converts from Mind Blast and stuff. Necromancer, I think Summon Necro is going to be better than a Bone Necro for a team composition, purely because as a Summon Necro, you can really be that support, tank, damage, support style role that is just there. You're running the curses, you're running the summons, all of this stuff, and you're just preventing anything from hitting your other teammates. So very strong with characters that do a lot of damage and need some support, such as like, hey, a Lightning Amazon or something. Also a little slow to get going, though, which is why I wouldn't say Necro and Javazon are a great starting, just like two-player combination, because they're both slow characters. So you have to remember, slow character versus fast character, it can take a while before they get to the point where they can really help each other out. So Bone Necro, still good, has that support tank damage. The damage is a little low though, and if you're running Bone, you don't get all of the good summons, and so you're going to be kind of lacking in the support as well, which is why I prefer the summon, but Bone is still okay. It's not a terrible character. Shout Barb is purely a support character. That's really the only barbarian worth starting on a ladder with. If you run a physical barbarian, you can have fun, you can do your own stuff, but if you're playing with other people who are moving in, doing like big damage and stuff, you're not going to really do anything. You're just going to run up and, miss a bunch of hits, and then they'll kill it and kind of keep going. It's going to kind of be very slow and painful for you. So this is a support character that I wouldn't recommend until you have a party of at least like 4. A Hammerdin is magic and he's damage. You can also do a Hammerdin with aura mix. This is where you start mixing in like conviction aura and salvation aura. You kind of get all of the auras to help your team, but you still have some damage from your hammers. And then you have a conviction support paladin that is a pure support. And this is, you are not running around for damage and trying to hit stuff. Your whole role is to be support, have all of the auras for your team, and especially have conviction maxed out so that you can just have a ton of damage for all of the elemental characters on your team. Lightning Sorceress is damage, Cold Source is damage, and Fire Source is damage. Cold Source, once again, has a little bit of support because there's a little crowd control for her, but I prefer cold and fire early on in the ladder. Lightning kind of takes a little bit to get going, with the exception of just having static, of course, because static is amazing. Beyond that, there is the druid. Elemental druid overall is damage. I like an elemental druid that also kind of maxes sage out to really help out the team, so you really get into that tank support role while also having really strong damage there. And then Shockwave Summoner is a pure support druid that's whole role is to just shockwave and stun everything for your team. Makes it a lot nicer. So with this stuff in mind, we can really start to take a look at some of the combinations that I think can be very helpful. Yeah, a pure Conviction Paladin pretty much stands around during combat. I mean, you're running and making sure that nobody is in trouble. If there's somebody taking damage, you're switching to salvation, whatever it is. Like, your role is to be very supportive and increase the damage of everybody else, but you don't really do a lot yourself. So here's some combinations and how I recommend the combinations really go together. So I think for a 2-player party, you want damage and a support tank damage character, right? So this is, grabbing. Once again, I wouldn't recommend fully a Javazon, but it can be okay. But grabbing a sorceress, grabbing a Hammerden, grabbing a mix, grabbing a Trapson, whatever, and then mixing it with a summon necro or with a elemental druid, with an oak sage, whatever it is. Like, having a combination of these two is going to be very good at players 2, because you need both of the characters to really do damage. You don't want to be running a support, paladin here or a barbarian here or anything like that, because you're just not going to have enough damage whatsoever, and that player is really not going to be buffing the other person enough for it to be worth it, right? And that's kind of true for 3 players as well. You still just need to be increasing your damage here. I would recommend just adding a second damage source to really buff it up. Now, on players 4 is where I would actually recommend that you bring in one of those support characters. So here you could do 3 damage and a support. You could do 2 damage and a support tank damage and a support, some combination like that. And this is where, once again, a character like a barbarian, like a conviction paladin, whatever, will actually start to add benefit to the team. Because now, let's say that I have an elemental druid, a trapsin, a cold sorceress, and a conviction paladin. Well, now the conviction is boosting 3 characters' damage, which kind of gives it enough reason that it doesn't need to be a hammering character that's, focusing on doing damage itself, because there's enough other characters that are getting that benefit. Or here you're bringing in the barbarian. You have enough damage that you're clearing stuff, but characters are kind of weak and they're dying and they're running into issues. Okay, perfect. Barbarian comes in, shouts, leaps, and can help the whole team out. And you have enough damage that you're still able to really clear stuff. So I think players 4 is where you can really start introducing that single character right there. For support, players 5 and 6, I think you're just adding in more damage characters, really, or a support tank damage and then another damage. And then it's not till player 7, roughly, that I would consider adding in that second support character. So here you run the Conviction Paladin and the Barbarian. Here you run the Shockwave Summoner, who just runs around with a big old bear and shockwaves everything. And Oak Sage maxed out, right? Here you run these things, so it's purely just for helping the team. And once again, this is because you have 5 people that can really do a lot of damage, and so that's going to be super helpful. And then once again, on players 8, I recommend adding in another damage right there. And once again, with a lot of these like support tank damage, you can kind of, okay, this could be also a damage right there. So you can kind of look and say, hey, this character could be kind of a mix and match. But this is going to be really your solid stuff. And so I can make up some quick combinations when I look at these things, right? So 2 players. Okay, I want to run a cold sorceress, and a hammer or a mix. That could be fine, right? That's like a solid paladin sorceress combination right there. I want to run a trapsin and an elemental druid. That could be a very strong 2-player combination right there, right? Let's go to 4 players. All right, once again. Well, I already did a 4-player before, but let's look at another one. I'll run a... we'll do the barbarian with a summon necro, or I'll run a summon necro itself with a trapsin, with a lightning javazon, and with a fire sorceress. That sounds like a pretty solid team to me right there. And then this summon necro can be getting lower resist to really help out all of that elemental damage that's going to be existing. Also, there's a lot of fragility on that team because you've got the lightning javazon, you've got the fire source. They can be in trouble. Summons get in front. Boom. Super helpful. 6 players. Okay, so we need 4 damage. I'll run a lightning sorceress, a cold sorceress, a fire boson, and a trapsin, and then I'll mix in a conviction paladin and a hammer or a mix, or just a hammered in as well. Maybe just a straight hammered in for damage there as well, right? So that could be something right there. And then an example, if we look at my 8-player team that I run with, that we have the world record for fastest to Hellbale kill and to Uber's kill. And our team runs like this. We have, and obviously we switch off a lot of the things, but we're running a cold sorceress, a fire sorceress, a support sorceress that teleports and statics, but she's purely for speed. But she shifts over into cold, so that's kind of 3 damage right there. We have a trapsin. We have a elemental druid that turns into a shockwave summoner. We have a paladin that runs just conviction. So he starts out kind of in that like mix and then just goes straight into a conviction support paladin completely. We don't run any Amazons or necromancers. They're just a little slow for that speed, but they can be very strong characters overall to have in. And then I think we run 1 more assassin just for a little bit more damage and support tank. So really our 2 supports are, barbarian. So our supports are barbarian and shockwave summoner. Our support tank damage is the conviction paladin. And then all the others are pretty much damage and speed. So we run that 5-2-1 idea. Or, once again, you can have traps in as damage or support tank damage, right? So, like, you can kind of mix and match some of the damage with the support tank damage characters. But essentially, these combinations, I would say, are going to give you pretty optimal run speed, feel good, and all the players will feel like their role is doing well, which I think is the important thing, right? You don't want to be running, like I said, that barbarian on 2 players because the barbarian's not doing enough to kill stuff and also doesn't feel like he's supporting the other character enough to make it worth it. When you're a barbarian supporting 7 people, 5 people, you feel way more necessary and important than when you're supporting like a single other character. So that would be my recommendations. Once again, I know that's not like a perfect exact, hey, go play the paladin and sorceress with your buddy. That's a great 2-player team. But it kind of gives you those options to really look around and play around and decide. And honestly, so many of the combinations, like I said, just work. They just work in many ways. And so it's not always needing to be perfect. It just needs to be, what do you like playing and what does your friend like playing, and do those match up? Does he want to play a summon necro and you want to play a conviction paladin? Okay, well now that doesn't really match up very well, and you can see that from the sheet. But there's a lot of other stuff that that does. So anyways, I hope that's helpful, YouTube. I'd love to hear what sort of combinations you've run in the past that were really successful, what you think would be fun to try in the future. And yeah, leave that in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Peace, everybody.